Hey everyone, welcome to my video on guard clauses in JavaScript. So today I'm going to be talking about how we can use guard clauses on multiple different examples and the use cases we can have along with them. Guard clauses themselves are they're important programming constructs that help clean your code and make it more readable for other users who are accessing it or all other developers. So I'm going to start with a quick example with our function here, divide. Now, divide, we want to have it divide, but at the same time, what we want it to do is whenever y is 0, because we don't want to divide by 0, we always want to return nothing. So in this case, we'll notice we're actually using a guard clause here. And by the way, I do have a bunch of examples. However, I'm going to include them in a GitHub repository for everyone. It'll be in a link below. You can access it and you can see all the code there along with a little README that could give you a little instructional manual yourself to just go through it yourself. So going back to the code, you'll notice that obviously with 0, we do not want to divide with 0. So what happens is we use a guard clause over here to return undefined rather than, and this is one of the ways guard clauses work where they're added at the top of the code and at the top of the function. This would help us remove any just like annoying cases that might disrupt the code, and it improves the readability. Now, obviously, we can do this as a regular piece of code. Every other piece of code can do the same thing, but I'll show you the use cases in the bad example versus the upgraded example. But for now, this is how guard clause works. And another thing I wanted to mention for those who may not be like that savvy with JavaScript, whenever you just write return along with the semicolon, it's actually returning undefined, and it's pretty much a shorter way of saying return undefined. Anyways, so moving on to example 2 is another scenario where we would want to include a guard clause, which would check whenever our index is whenever we're looking for a value in our find index function. However, the array itself does either not exist or it's empty. So we want to have that guard clause which checks all those scenarios at the top. That way, once instead of running any pieces of the code here, rather it would return based on the guard clause -1 and immediately cut the code. This would help also improve efficiency for the code, and it's also another way to improve readability because you know that all the error checking is done at the top, and then the actual relevant pieces of the code that provide functionality are provided in the bottom. Now, these are both scenarios where we would use guard clauses, but there's also another scenario when it comes to readability, because you'd notice in example 1 and 2 where there's not much of a difference from a normal if statement that you'd get from either of them. So let's go to the bad example. So let's just say we're looking for personal data of some individuals in our database. And these people, we want to first check if we can access, they have any personal information. And on top of that, we want to find whoever has that personal information, has a name Adam, is above the age 18, and is subscribed to whatever, I would say YouTube or something. So in this case, we would have to run 4 if statements. And the thing is, they end up becoming nested, and it becomes very unpleasant for any individual that's just going through the code and noticing, like, seeing 4 if statements go deeper into themselves with all the indentations and all that. It's very messy. What you can do instead, rather, is in the upgraded example, you can notice that what I'm doing here is I'm using a guard clause at the top to check if person data.personal is not null. So this way, once we know that, we can further clean the code by adding personal data, which kind of just shortens that line for us. And then on top of that, we could have 3 more guard clauses, or we could, in fact, we could put this all into one guard clause and just have an or statement wrap around it. So that could equal 1 guard clause. I just put 3 for readability and just to make it not stretch out all in one line for a little bit too much complication. However, at the end of the day, what happens is that in the bad example, we have this messy code that brings us to what we want to do for that subscribed person. But in the upgraded example, you notice all the guard clause information, such as the personal data, etc., is done at the top, and then at the bottom, the actual functionality will be presented over here. Now you can use this in many other scenarios, but these are just the 3 scenarios that I can provide to you guys. They kind of show you how it can improve either efficiency, or it could also improve just the overall readability for you and other developers. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, subscribe. I'll see you all next time.